Fellas, in today's video, we are going to be ranking all of the Marvel rival heroes on a tier list from S to F for where they fit in this season. Obviously, everyone's going to have a slightly differing opinion, but at the end of the day, this is where I think they best fit. Meta or ban, needs buffs. I don't know if the right word is. I want kind of meta. I guess it'll just be good. Aim to use. Is there a simpler way to say that? This will be good. Now, I don't think there's necessarily any bad heroes. If you compare Hela to Black Widow, or even Hawkeye to Black Widow, you're gonna be like, wow, this sniper is absolutely terrible. Let me add in one more slot. Adro below. So Black Widow wasn't a good example because while I do think they need some changes, if you were to buffer, I think that would make them very broken. So I redid the tier listing and I think this should work just a little bit better than what we had before. Starting off, let's just pop in Cloak and Dagger. I think they're a fantastic choice. Absolutely great for healing over a wide area. You can bounce your shots off walls to heal your teammates around the corner. Same thing with doing damage. And then Dagger actually does quite a bit of damage with his basic, and his invis wall does a lot of damage too. And it's great for disorientation. Plus there's the new trick that's going around where you float up high with Dagger, pop your ult, that way you're not likely to be stopped. Overall, I think Cloak and Dagger probably is easy S tier, good for meta. Topped them with Luna Snow. I don't actually like Luna Snow all that much. I find her shots to be kind of weird. She does do okay damage, same with healing. And you can throw your little angel idol, I think it is, so that you can get healing on someone else who's far away while you heal up your team. But her main thing shines with her ultimate, which effectively stops the game for like 10 seconds. So this is a good use it or ban it. I'm actually having a lot of fun with the S one, but I don't think there's too many heroes that actually fit into it. Yeah, I'm going to throw Magneto up in S as well. He can hit through shields. He does good damage. His ultimate really is the only thing that kind of sets him apart, and not in a good way. He can launch enemies back, pop a shield on himself, pop a shield on someone else. Effectively like a cockroach. If you play him right, it's very hard to kill him. He does have a shield that's similar to Strange's, but it's not as big or as long. I'm not changing that. So while I wouldn't put Doctor Strange in S tier, I do think that Magneto does sit there well, because he's not absolutely broken as he's not super fast, but he hits for good damage. He can hit through shields. He can deal with flyers. He doesn't have that weird anti-healing thing. Oh, Storm. Then we have Storm. Storm, with her season 1 buff that she got, absolutely fantastic damage. She buffs up her team with movement, getting back to a point or onto a point at the beginning of the game. She does team buffs, and then she has her other move, which makes that even stronger. Her ultimate is kind of iffy, but it really depends on the Storm. She is a flyer, which for some reason people just don't seem to attack them all that often. So they can hit from far away, they're good with their team, they have a decent ultimate, and they do just passive team buffs. Not something that you have to constantly reapply, not something that you have to, something that you really need to keep a watchful eye on. I think out of the 35 heroes, those are going to be primarily the only 4 in the S tier. I know Hulk can be a popular pick, but for S tier, I don't think that's where he would fit. And now quickly, just to get out of the way, we have Black Widow. They do not need a buff, they need to be reworked. And I say this as someone who, I do like Black Widow. However, they are just too strong enough where any better, they would be completely broken. 1 headshot, 1 body shot will get rid of a squishy. 2 headshots, 1 body shot will kill a tank. You make them any stronger, that's completely out the window. I think they need to be entirely reworked in order to fix them. Let's knock out some easier ones. Jeff the Shark needs buffs. And then depending on the team that you're playing with and the enemy team as well, they can go behind their lines and do some spammy attacks, especially when teamed up with Luna Snow. They have decent healing overall, but he just plays too clunky. The main thing that he's known for is that his healing spray goes through other heroes, and his ultimate, which to really make the most out of his ultimate, you have to kill yourself off the map. And so that's not entirely awful, but with the rest of the supports that are here, he definitely needs some buffs just to make him more viable. But again, I think with just about every one of these heroes, including Black Widow, they can be very good, but just as comparison between each of them, he does need some buffs. With him goes Mr. Fantastic. His ultimate, not very good. He's a weird pseudo tank DPS hybrid, but I do find him kind of weak. And I know that in the first like 2 weeks, he was everywhere and no one could figure out how to take him down. But after a little bit of time, people figured it out. It's not that hard. And he slipped to near the bottom of the list. I think if they made the option to allow him to transform into that tank rather than having it happen automatically would be a good start. And then something either with a damage buff or with how his attacks actually hit, because you really have to drag and like time everything perfectly in order to get the most out of him. And then Scarlet Witch, I also think needs some buffs. Now, I like Scarlet Witch a lot, and I think they actually are my DPS main at the moment. I like their maneuverability. I like how their basic attack looks kind of similar to Cloak's. I like their secondary attack as well. Her ultimate is complete trash, but when it does land, my god, does it land. And you can get in some decent kills. No one is really prepared for Scarlet Witch because of how often she is played. But overall, I don't think that she's good enough yet to really justify having her. Now let's move on to the C category, if they are your main. This is going to include some simple ones. Spider-Man. Now I think Spider-Man is kind of broken, especially with his range of abilities. But from my gameplay and from everything that I have read and seen about him, the main thing with him is you have to be focusing on health packs. You cannot rely on your team to heal you, which isn't bad in of itself, but when you're doing so, it really puts you at a disadvantage. You have to focus on chaining and weaving, and sometimes you may not even get kills with those. And then during the middle of those combos, if you're facing just one character, maybe two, that's absolutely fine. For the average person, this is not going to be someone that you can just pick up and play. You do have to put in a little bit of work. You do have to have a little bit of a background. Otherwise, you are just going to get washed and washed and washed. It definitely goes the same for Captain America. Both of them do require you changing some settings to get the most out of them. I personally do like Captain America as well, if Magneto is taken and we need a tank, but you really have to be focused in on what you're doing to get the most out of him. He's good for rushing the back line, causing disruption, but he's not very strong. You gotta be sure to aim your shield throws. You can't just be in the heat of battle all the time. And his actual blocking shield, I don't think it's all that great. It has some cool uses, and I've seen some cool TikToks with it, but there's better tanks in this regard. Actually, you know what? I think that's a similar thing for Penny Parker. When I see a Penny Parker on the team, I know it's going to go one of two ways. We are either going to get washed, or they are going to be absolute dog water. I have yet to see an in-betweener for Penny Parker. Her mines are good for killing squishies. She has the contraption to set up webs and slip people down. Incredibly good on the defensive, especially for convoy. But just as for a general game where you don't know what it is, so even like domination, Penny Parker is not going to be all that great. And so I think if they are your main, absolutely use them. But if they aren't, if there's someone that you have not played before or don't have a lot of time in, she is not going to be good enough to justify her. And then next up we have Iron Fist. Iron Fist is a pain in the butt to fight, especially good ones. They can heal on their own. You really need to have some certain characters to help take care of him. They do incredible damage really fast, but that is if you know how to play him. His actual kit is kind of clunky and kind of weird. Some of you may have had your first experience with that from the Fortune Colors event. All right, let's start with Groot. One thing I noticed in the lower ranks and most of the time in casual play, when people see his walls, they just stop attacking. They don't try to knock down the walls. With an ultimate that just using his ultimate alone will not kill anyone. And so he definitely is not meta, but he is an excellent choice. I know I gave a long list of cons, but his walls are entirely good. Because look at it the other way. Often, you're not going to see people try to take down his walls that fast. They're good for blocking off characters, getting in easy kills. His attacking walls do 60 bonus damage, and his healing wall will heal you up depending on if you attack someone within range. And you can place that off to the side so that you have your own passive healing without having to worry about anything. He's very tanky. He does hit pretty well. His ultimate really does shine, especially with other heroes. But if you're just looking at squishies, you use his ultimate and then the Spore Bomb. That's a kill right there. And then with him, and then next we have Mantis. Mantis is really great. Their ultimate, really good for healing. She does do off healing. She hits very hard and she can sleep with the other team. She is my second choice for a support person. So if I'm playing support and Cloak and Dagger is already taken, I will choose Mantis. They are not meta as, in terms of actual healing, not the best. They're good if they need to focus on just one person, but not good for a team. They do have passive healing, which is not that great, but they do have it. But I think they really shine with their actual basic attack. 50 damage per hit, and you want to get as many headshots as you can. You can spam her basic attack, 2.5 hits per second, and her life orbs are charged really fast. So even if you don't land those headshots, they still are very great. Next we have Squirrel Girl. Squirrel Girl, I think, is honestly the simplest character to use. You have her basic attack, which hits hard, really hard if you land a hit. 2 different attacks to mobilize enemies. She can jump, get away, and she has an ability that lets you use another ability right away without a cooldown. They are a good character to use, and I think that's what B really is. They're a good character to use if you do not know their toolkit or you haven't seen much about them. Very simple to learn, does a good deal of damage, but the reason why they're not higher is their lack of utility. Yes, you can immobilize a hero for a second and a half, but that really won't get too much done, especially depending on the hero. Now we have Hela, and I think Hela is better than Hawkeye. I'll say that out loud, but I don't think either are meta. And I'm primarily looking at their seasonal bonus for that. In season 0, Hela was absolutely disgusting. You would see them all the time. Now I do see them sparsely, but not all too much. Same thing with Hawkeye. I actually think I could put them right next together. I never thought about the particular ranking in each of the tiers. Hawkeye, I think, is just a little bit worse than Hela. They're both good for backline and honestly even centrally with your team. Hawkeye can basically one-shot people, but you do have to aim and hit headshots. Hela is so much better than that. Plus, when you get a kill, does damage. She has a good way to get away. Her ultimate is just a nightmare, although it can be countered by some heroes like Strange. An absolute pain to deal with. They hit incredibly hard, both of them. Hawkeye, I think, is lower because of his ultimate. Because yeah, you do see the after images, but you can't crit. He does have a little bit of a defensive capability and can double jump. However, they both are powerhouses. They both can shred the other team very fast. They're simple to pick up, simple to play. You just point and aim if you don't know what else to do. And even if you just do that, that will take you a very long way. With how Moon Knight actually is, but right now they're going in the A category. And that has to do with his completely broken ultimate, which starts way too fast and is glitched. There's a bug in it at the moment that lets it do double damage. He shines really well with his Ankh. That's cool, but they're very easy to destroy. And as I've been seeing a lot more lately, or at least I do it, they're very quick to take down. I find he plays a lot in the back line, mostly for poke damage at that point. His attacks do chain. You know what? I think A is actually a better choice here as I talk more about it. He can get around, he can glide. If he has his team up, he can turn invisible. I didn't mention team ups primarily yet. Cloak and Dagger with the team up of Moon Knight, who is fairly common, gets bonus healing. And Moon Knight's very strong. I do think that you do need to have a little bit of time with him to properly utilize him, but he's not very techy. And primarily in something he gets very fast is his ultimate, and that absolutely wipes out a team, even tanks. Adam Warlock and B, I don't think that's too controversial. He's very slow, nothing at all like his on movie screen character. He can revive his team. I would have him higher if his healing ability was better. And his ultimate, yeah, you bring your team back, but they only have a small portion of their health and they can be fairly easy to track down. He can make good plays. Like, I don't mean that he's like a bad character. He is a good character, but there are better choices in this case. I think he's a very good off healer. His healing bond, I believe it is, good for dispersing damage, will help your team survive an ultimate. But if you use it incorrectly, that will also kill your team pretty fast. I don't think he needs any buffs per se, but he's nowhere near A-list and he's nowhere near the meta list. Bruce. Now, Bruce is not in that S meta or ban tier list. And I do think there's a lot of good Hulks out there. I do not think there's a lot of great Hulks out there. You do have to pay a lot of attention to what you are doing. It's a lot of jumping around. You do need to make a settings switch to properly utilize him. The reason why I don't have him in S is because I find his hero is just a little bit clunky. One of his abilities is while he's jumping, he can knock down enemies out of the air. I have seen and I have experienced that not always being the case. And so I do believe that is just a little bug at the moment because it doesn't make sense otherwise. But he can hit fast, he can hit really hard. His ultimate, you just get more health and yeah, send things off further. And then if you die, you do have a second grace with Bruce, where if you do enough damage, you can turn back to Hulk. That way you don't die. He does okay damage and his shots are kind of weird, but he has his explosion bomb, which is good to immediately use. Launch yourself up in any nearby enemies, get out of there, and do damage from afar. I know that they do get banned a lot, and I know that they can be a real pain in the butt. Commonly, that Hulk that you face, he might be a menace, but he's not going to be broken, and he's not going to be an absolute, like, you need to have this on the team. Rocket, D. I hate on Rocket. I don't like Rocket. I admire the players that can play Rocket good. I admire the players that can play Rocket excellently. Rocket is never going to be someone that I choose if I have a choice, but he is very good. In fact, I would say more often than not, but not every time, more often than not, if there is a Rocket on my team, I feel confident that we're going to win, even if we don't have a Bucky or Punisher. Rocket is very niche. He's good with healing. If you are being healed, you do got to pay somewhat of attention to the healing. For most of the time when you do need heals, you just expect it to kind of hit you from the back or the side, wherever your support is. But with Rocket, you do got to have that little bit extra situational awareness to follow the healing orbs. He's great with damage and he gets a ton of assists, but he's not getting kills like Mantis. He's not getting absolute healing saves like Luna or Cloak. His ultimate does do a damage buff, which is great, but it does take a while to charge. He can revive, which is nice. I do think he is better than Adam Warlock, just for how often and how well I do see people use Rocket. But he's not a tier better, he just is better than Adam. Let's just do some quick ones here. Oops. Namor, excellent. Psylocke, excellent. Oh, and Star-Lord. Namor, Psylocke, Star-Lord. All extraordinarily excellent heroes to have. Namor especially when teamed up with Lena Snow. His turrets are great, good for damage, especially if you aggro them onto a specific target. They will absolutely shred anyone. He has good getaway abilities. He has a shield. Fantastic choice. Psylocke, absolute great damage. Again, similar to Namor, just differently. She has ways to get away. Her ultimate can catch off guard, but if you are close to the outer ring, not too hard to get away. And I find it's actually very hard to kind of cancel out her ultimate or to kill her during it. And then Star-Lord, same thing, especially his ultimate. Absolutely melts people, aim locks. I don't understand what he does when he shoots all the different ways like a cowboy going through the air. I don't know if that's supposed to be like similar to Spider-Man's ultimate. You ever see good ones? You're gonna get shredded. He's very good. Hits super fast, reloads fast, can fly, gets around great. These 3 DPSs, absolutely fantastic choices. Let's see, next we have Invis Woman. I'm not putting them in any specific order unless I say, but I think she is pretty high on the excellent list. I don't like her ultimate all that much, but it is very useful. Slows down enemies, turns your teams invisible, and heals. Her attack hits once, hits coming back. Same thing with healing. More complicated to play the cloak and dagger, as you do have to actually aim this time. I absolutely love the force push, the force pull. Great for knocking heroes off the map. Great for sending tanks back for a couple seconds and getting someone off your team, especially like a Wolverine. I think they are better in terms of utility and healing than Rocket and Atom. And while she's not a DPS by any means like Mantis, she has better healing and support. Now let's do Black Panther, Punisher, Magic. Black Panther, you might be thinking he's so good. Every time I see him on the enemy team, he shreds me. That's true. He is very good for his 1, maybe to 2 combos, but then he needs to get out and go recharge his abilities. He's very squishy, very easy to kill, and that person does need to be somewhat techie inclined in order to properly use him. But how is that different than Spider-Man or Iron Fist? This is very simple. A lot of spear dashes. Spear dash, that's it. He does take a little bit to get the hang of. That's why he's in B. With a little bit of work, you can absolutely shine with him. Same thing if you use a shield on another player or you push him off another player. If he misses, he needs to get out. There's no recomping that. And that's where Punisher comes in next. He is great for hit scan. He does decent damage. He does really well when he's paired up with Rocket as well. His turret can absolutely get some good damage in, but he has to be stationary. And his ultimate will melt the other team. I just think he's counter too easy, and you do have to be somewhat central. I think he's just oddly clunky enough, but if he isn't close, he has a shotgun, deals fantastic damage. He has a zip line, he can have 2 up at any given time. Good for getting around as well. This is not by any means to punk on him at all. He is a decent character, he's a good character, but just that, he's a good character. Very simple to learn, very simple to use, but there's not much else substance for that. I think he's a prime example of a middle of the road hero. I think he would be something like Mario in like Mario Kart. Middle of the ground, he can move around decent, he has decent attacks, he has a decent ultimate, but he's not really going to shine for much of anything else. And then we have Magic. I know there's a lot of Magic fans out there. Magic, you do need to have some work in to really get the hang of her. I think she's just a little bit slow, especially with their basic attack and melee weave. She can use the teleports, but they do have a cooldown, so you have to situationally use those. I think a lot of people really give good grace for her little demon spawn she can do after a teleport. Yeah, move a couple of feet over, no longer a problem. Her mobility solely relies on her teleport, and using her teleport gets rid of her mobility. If you see a Magic in her flow, they are an absolute demon. But honestly, even with their ultimate, when I play games, that's not something that I'm scared of or like, oh man, I gotta account for that. It's, oh, that's just Magic. Let's keep an eye on that. And now again, this doesn't mean that as someone who's exceptionally skilled at them, if they play them, they're only going to be just in a good tier. These are the characters as a general. And then we have Venom and we have Thor. No particular order, as they are very different characters in their own regard. Venom is good for diving. He's good for getting around. Now, he only has one swing where I think that limits him just a tiny bit for mobility. But he has a shield which he has to pop often because he just soaks up damage. Ultimate, not great, but gives him his shield as well. I think he is a perfect example of a diver. I honestly can't think of anyone else that's better as a diver than Venom. I think that's extraordinarily where he shines. Is he going to be a good tank on his own? No, he's a diver. He's not going to be frontline. He's going to be in the other team or swinging away. He doesn't hit all that hard, but he will kill you if you aren't paying attention and focusing on him, which can be hard to do as a diver. And so I think he fits comfortably and solidly in B tier. And that's where Thor comes in. Thor, I think, is going to be just a tiny bit controversial. You got to manage his Thor hammers, his Thor force, if you want to call so. They can be very offensive. He works great as a frontline hero. He has decent mobility for a Vanguard, but he's not going to be making any extraordinarily aggressive plays. You do have to keep an eye on his actual Thor force in order to get the most out of him. And you're not going to be in the attacking state all the time, in which case he will be a little bit slow. If you use his other abilities, that takes away his hammers, which prevents you from getting the most out of him. He takes a little bit of work to play. He can be a little bit of a pain to deal with. I think he fits very comfortably in the middle, completely different than Venom. These two have different play styles, where they play, what they do, how they attack in every single way. But I think they both sit comfortably in the B tier. And now let's do some more. Wolverine. You know what? It's the final 5. I'll take my time. Wolverine. I absolutely adore that in the beginning, so many different players hated on Wolverine. There's so many videos, so many Reddit posts about it, about how he's an awful hero. He needs to be reworked. He's terrible to play. He can't do anything. And that just goes to show you how misinformation, someone's bad opinion can spread, and that's all people believe. Do your own research. This is my opinion on a tier list. My opinion can be wrong. I'm wrong all the time. Do your research, play who you want to play. Except for Black Widow, play who you want to play. Wolverine, absolute tank shredder. In fact, sometimes he does get banned and ranked for just that cause. He's great for taking targets out of the enemy team, bringing them back to his team, and just shredding them. If the Wolverine is extraordinarily good, he'll even bring them to the edge of a map and just drop them off. He gets more damage as he attacks with his rage, and he does more damage in general the higher the health bar, the max health bar, the other player has. Is he needed for a team? No. Is he a great asset to any team? Absolutely. Will you see a lot of players play Wolverine, especially in casual? If they were there in person, you tell them not to touch Wolverine ever again? Yeah, but he's fairly simple to learn. His ultimate can be a bit tricky to land, but he's a great hero, great asset. Next, we have Bucky. Why is Bucky higher than Punisher? Simple. He is better than Punisher. He's great for knocking heroes out of the air. He can pull in enemies out of their team. His abilities let him reload his gun, and his gun hits pretty dang hard. His ultimate, especially if you can use it properly, is extraordinarily good. And with his team up with Rocket, unlimited firing of his gun, super duper good. Between all of his abilities, which do heavy damage, and his basic attack, which does really great damage, Bucky is a fantastic hero to have. He hits hard even without his team up with Rocket. An exceptional pick to have on any team. He's not super broken, he's not meta by any means, but he is a great choice, a great DPS. Maybe a little controversial again. Iron Man in the A category for excellent. Iron Man, not meta, don't need to ban him. His ultimate, basically one shots. He's a flyer, he's always up in the air, and his attacks just generally do good beefy damage. He can be a little bit clunky, especially with the air travel, as that's a little bit clunky, but he hits insanely hard. And again, for some reason, people tend not to shoot the heroes that are up in the air. I don't know why. The reason why he's not up where Storm is, Storm gives general boosts on top of everything and can pierce. Iron Man is also great for hiding up and around corners and then just beaming at the team as they run by. He's a fantastic hero. He's very straightforward, simple to use, kind of like Squirrel Girl in that regard, but he just does so much better. Takes a little bit more skill as you do have to navigate in the air, and he actually has an ultimate that is decent. It can be blocked, but it is very decent. And then the last of the Vanguards, we have Doctor Strange. Big old shield, 600 health. That's awesome. I find it's best to melee weave with him. He hits pretty hard. He has a projectile, which makes it possible to hit enemies in the air, which you should do. Please shoot your Iron Man. His ultimate will effectively imprison the enemy team for a couple seconds. Does great damage. The one caveat with him, which is why he's not up higher than where he currently is because of the dark matter. When you do attacks, you build up dark matter, which you can release to do an area of effect for decent damage. That makes it so that you cannot be healed, which is very painful. He has his teleports, which can be tricky to get the hang of. You can also use it to block off the other team's entrances from coming back out onto the battlefield. You can use it to set up traps. He is a very good character. He can levitate, move around in the air a little bit. He's a very great character once you do get to learn him. And now for the last pick of Loki. I couldn't decide if I wanted him in S tier, A tier, or B tier, so I went middle of the road, combined it all together for A tier. He has his healing rune, which will effectively keep your team alive for as long as they're up. He's good with his doppelgangers getting around. He does area of effect damage. The biggest thing is that he can steal or he can copy someone else's character, meaning it is possible for you to have 2 Lina Snows on the team for a short period, giving you about 30 seconds of next to no damage. He's good for being up high and just doing his burst damage with his basic attack. His doppelgangers do follow him. He can turn invisible, heal up, all that good jazz. He is actually a very excellent character, now that I think about it more and explain him more. And then he could choose from any of the characters that are available in that match. I think he's a great hero to have, especially for a healer, but I often see people play him as a DPS over a healer, which can be a little bit of a pain point. However, that doesn't negate him. Those are just player faults. Is he a better healer than Mantis? Really depends. Depends on if his doppelgangers are close. He has so much versatility and utility, and I think that's where he shines. So in our B tier, in the B tier, we have Squirrel Girl, Rocket, Adam Warlock, Black Panther, Punisher, Magic, Venom, and Thor. And then in the A tier, we have Groot, Mantis, Hela, Hawkeye, Moon Knight, Hulk, Namor, Psylocke, Star-Lord, Invisible Woman, Wolverine, Bucky, Iron Man, Strange, and Loki. So that is a wrap on all of the heroes in Marvel Rivals and where they place in their ranking. Again, this is just my opinion. Your opinion may differ, and that's okay. Tell me, do you think I got any wrong? Do you think someone should be somewhere else, or someone just blatantly is in the wrong spot? Let me know in the comments below. And hey, hit that like button if you're still watching. Subscribe for more videos like this if you haven't already. Stay tuned for the next one.